Howdy, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Run from the Norm podcast. This one's going to be a little bit different. After much coaxing and encouragement from past guest and friend, as well as mentor, Sid Sullivan, I agreed to flip the script a little bit. So I am going to be the guest, and Sid is going to be the guest host in the following episode. I tried to be as honest and transparent as I possibly could, the same thing that I ask of all my guests, and I hope that you find some value, maybe some motivation and encouragement in what I'm about to share. It did get a little emotional at times, but it was a good conversation, I felt, once it was all said and done. I will say there is a little caveat about 3/4 of the way through our chat. I do mention my first ultra, and I say the Wilson Creek 100K, and I meant the Silver City 100K. Again, I say Wilson Creek 100K for my first ultra. I meant Silver City 100K. Same race director, different race. And with that, I'm just going to go ahead and let this thing roll. I hope you enjoy what you're about to hear, and feel free to provide feedback if you have it. With that, we're going to say it is time to run from the norm. Okay, on this episode of the Run from the Norm podcast, we're going to do something a little bit different. This is completely outside of the norm, and I'm extremely nervous, but Sid Sullivan, guest of the pod, you've been a guest on it. You're going to do the hosting, and I'm going to do the answering. So I'm going to just turn it over to you and let you run with it. And if you need to cut me off, tell me to land the plane. Otherwise I'll answer anything as honestly and authentically, transparently as I can.
Right on. Well, this is just awesome, and definitely on the whole notion of run from the norm. This is not the norm.
No.
And I appreciate the opportunity to be the host and turn the tables on you this time. And first and foremost, you're inspiring to a lot of us and just an all-around good guy. And I'm going to start by kind of tying together the inspiration piece of you to a lot of us and your running career by asking you to start by sharing with those who are listening the story about the deer that you carried down the hill and the run. So tell us about the run and that whole story, and then we'll dig into a little bit about you and your background.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. You never know when you're doing these things, how it's landing with people. You don't always get feedback directly, so I appreciate that. It's really nice to know that these efforts are well received and making an impact positively out there in the community, so thank you for that. So the story of the deer, I spent a lot of time running the wildlife management area out by Shaw Mountain. And it's, for those that know it, I always call it touching the tower. It's about a 14 mile round trip, about 3,000 plus elevation gain loss. And I was up running with Ash, my pup, who unfortunately, she passed here recently, but she's my adventure buddy. So we were always up running the hills. And as we were coming down, it was snowy. I can't remember what time of the year it was, but obviously winter. But we were coming down, and as we were probably about, I would say, 3 or 4 miles back down from the base, we came around a corner, and there was a baby deer in the middle of the trail. Actually, I take that back. It wasn't in the trail. It was off on the side down a little wash, and it was up against a bush, and it couldn't move. And it was just laying there, and it looked like it was pretty skinny. It looked like it was struggling. And I can't remember if that was when we had Snowmageddon, but there was a lot of snow on the ground, not a lot of food. And I think it just got so weak, it got left behind. And so I see it, and Ash and I kind of start making our way around, and it's not running away. It can't even get up. And I can't just leave it there. Sure, there's going to be those people that say, let nature do its thing. If it gets eaten, it gets eaten. I just couldn't do that. It was a baby. So we work our way over, and I've got this all on video. I've shared it out before, mixed responses from some people, but we get over there and it can't move. So I collect it up and pick it up, and it's not fighting me, and it's alert, but it's not fighting. And I throw it over my shoulder, just packing it on my shoulder. And I finish going down the hill, and it doesn't fight at all. It just lets me take it down the hill. So we finish up the run, and it's getting dark. And I load it in my car and my dog, and I've got pictures of it sitting there in the seat with its head on my center console, and Ash is laying next to me, and we drive all the way back to my house off of Eagle Road, and I bring it in the house and I start feeding it, force feeding it because it's not even strong enough to eat. I'm force feeding spinach and carrots and whatever I can get that's light, but trying to get it down, and I'm rubbing its neck, trying to get it to swallow, and it gets a few swallows down. And after about an hour, it started getting a little bit more energy back. And I'm feeding it dog food, anything I can find. Yeah. And I'm a bachelor at this point, so it's just me and my dog in my house feeding this deer. And finally it starts to get some energy back, and I got it to drink a little bit of water. So pick it up, load it in my car, drive back the same night, drive back to the mountain, hike back up to with it on my shoulder back to where we found it, because I thought maybe the family might come back if it gets some energy. So hike back up, and there's a small little stream in the wash, and so I get it down there and I'm splashing water on its face, and it finally starts drinking a little bit, and we leave it there. And we go back down to the bottom, Ash and I, and we wait for probably 45 minutes or so and head back up to check and see if it's moved, and it was gone. So whether it ended up getting taken by another animal, I don't know, but I had to give it at least a fighting chance. And I had, like I said, I had some of it on, I caught on video just because it was such a crazy moment. And yeah, mixed results on the responses from that, but I couldn't leave it. I couldn't leave it there.
Well, I had to start there.
Yeah.
For those of us that know you, you're our hero. You inspire us. You're an all-around awesome runner. Awesome. You're just awesome.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I mean, it ties that whole running thing, which is kind of what the theme is for Run from the Norm.
Yeah.
But also, it's just that whole inspiration of how much you care about not only the people around you, but also the environment. And
absolutely,
you just couldn't let that thing be there and not. So
it needed a fighting chance.
Yeah. And we just love that. So it's a legendary story among us that know you in the running community. And it's just a great way to start the podcast today.
That's funny. Thank you.
Let's talk about you. Tell us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, and just kind of segue, if you will, into how you hit the running road. Sure.
It's a great question. So I was born in Moses Lake, Washington, and my family, we were hay farmers. I lived in a little single wide trailer the first, few years of my life. I don't remember much from 10, 12 before that. But yeah, we were hay farmers, and in a teeny little town outside of Tri-Cities, Washington called Desert Air. And my dad and my dad's side, my grandpa and grandma on my dad's side, they were all from like Tucson area, Arizona. And they were farmers down there, but had come up to Washington for land, years back. There was opportunity to farm. And so they came up there, and we were hay farmers again, like I said, and eventually moved to Tri-Cities. We needed somebody to do some crop dusting. My dad decided to learn how to fly. Eventually we moved to Tri-Cities, and he started a flight instruction school. And so till I was about 5 or so, that's what we did. And then this is kind of a long story to get to the running side of things, but it's also a lot of my motivation why I run today, which I'll get to. But my folks got divorced when I was 5, and it actually makes me emotional even thinking about it now. And it really hit me hard. It's something I've really struggled with my entire life. I have a completely different perspective on all this now at 47 than I did then. But they split up when I was 5. My dad moved back down to Tucson, and for the majority of my life, I really didn't talk to him. My sister and I would go down periodically in the summers, but he worked a lot, a very hardworking person, and we just didn't really see him and spend much time with him. So eventually, my mom met my stepdad and remarried. I believe they got together, maybe I was 10 or so, but at some point, my stepdad, he had finished the I want to say the New York Marathon. And so we all collectively signed up for a YMCA run in Tri-Cities, and I'd never run that I can remember had any introduction to it before that.
And what age are you now?
Oh, geez, I'm probably, I don't know, maybe 10.
Okay.
I don't know, somewhere around there. I'm still really young. I don't remember much about that. Just a few little flashes. I remember doing this YMCA marathon and seeing a van pass. I don't know why that sticks out to me, but I used that as my pace. And so I just kind of kept trucking along. And that's the earliest memory I have of running. Eventually, we moved here when I was about, shortly after, 11, 12, because my stepdad was from here, multi-generational, from Nampa here, which, not far from where we're at. And when we got here, we were signed up as a family for Capital Kids Classic, I believe is what it's called, and some just shorter fun runs. And so we did those together just, a handful of times. And from that, there was just something about running that helped me deal with the anger I felt and the frustration I felt at the difficulties of dealing with divorce and seeing my family divide and feeling like, and I can tie this together. I have a great relationship with my father, my natural father now. He's actually, if there's anybody that knows the in-depths of my mind and how it works and all that, he's my best friend now. So I didn't really get to know him until I was in my 30s, but it's the impact that he's had on my life now. I can't even put it into words, but it became my outlet. And over the years, which we can get to, running became something that I used when I really didn't feel good. And because I knew when I finished, I would feel better. So a mile was a long ways. 2 miles was a really long ways. If I made it 3 or 4 miles, that was forever. Again, I didn't remember much about this March of Dimes Marathon in Tri-Cities. That was kind of a one-off thing. But when I actually made a focused effort to get out and run, it might have been once a week as I'm getting into high school, junior high. But that was my way of dealing with struggles.
Yeah.
And we can get into it, but throughout my later teens and 20s, it became the thing that I would go to again when I was really struggling and I needed to try to find a better space in my mind.
Did you do high school athletics?
Nothing.
Really?
No, I
picture you as big as you are. I picture you as the football player, the basketball player.
My mom wouldn't let me play football,
okay.
Which, I struggled with for a long time because I really wanted to. I really struggled with a sense of belonging, which, if I were to do some therapy, I'm sure it goes back to, when my folks divorced, my dad left, my mom got back into her trying to find herself. And so I just felt really, kind of alone. And I started over the years, which again, we can get to, I just really started to isolate myself. And so I did play sports for fun. My stepdad was very active with basketball. And when we moved here and we ended up at our house on the bench, my neighbor also played basketball. So we had family basketball events. And so through junior high and getting into high school, I'd play, but I tried to play organized sports a little bit more. I did when I was younger. I'd play some like city rec league stuff, but nothing super competitive. When it got into high school, it became more of a popularity contest, and I did not like playing that game. And I was also getting really driven to sports by my stepdad, who I love him to death, but I really struggled with that because I felt like I was getting pushed in a direction that I wasn't sure I wanted to go in. And when it came into the politics of the sports and stuff, I finally threw up my hands and I didn't want anything to do with it. So I started playing drums and I started hanging with a completely different friend group, and my life went in a totally different direction.
Well, that's one of the best things about you. You're a rocker and you got to tell everybody about you and the music.
Sure.
Because similar to running being an outlet, music is an outlet, and it's been that way for you. So let's just talk a little bit about music and how that's been an outlet for you. But let's tell the viewers or the listeners a little bit about what you play, because you just said drums.
Yeah.
You have guitars and others.
Yeah, we've got about a half dozen guitars sitting next to us, but I will be the first one to say I'm not a very good guitar player. I can power chord strum. I've noodled periodically over the years, but it's a great question. So my musical journey goes back to, again, early in my life when my folks separated. My mom was very involved in her younger years in theater, musical theater specifically. When they divorced, she got back involved in that. And she has an amazing voice, a beautiful voice. She'd sing around the house, getting ready for shows, whatever was on the radio. And so I grew up listening to my mom sing. And so I'd hum along with her, or she might be getting ready for a show and I would help sing some harmonies. So to me, like, one of the things I love about vocals is I love harmonies. So those that know about my musical background and what I've done, I ended up being a vocalist in the bands I've played with, which I'll get to. I love layering and I love the harmonies and stuff. But yeah, nobody knew I sang. I sang with my mom and in the car. And so, like I said, when I got into high school and things shifted and I got away from sports, drums were just an outlet. I could bang on them. They were loud. It got me into band, and I was in drum corps. And so I actually had opportunities to play for college, for BSU, Washington State, and I completely quit. I got out of high school, and after all the years of playing drums, I quit. And some life happened, And fast forward a couple of years or so, and I'd helped open the RC Willie out here on Eagle Road, and they needed some drivers and warehouse help. And so I was doing that, and I ended up at a party for one of my coworkers, and I was standing up against a wall. I love watching people. I'm not real good at being in the middle of it, but standing up against the wall next to a guy, and we start talking about the music playing, and I love this song. Oh, I love this song. We're both huge fans of punk and huge fans of some of the harder rock that was coming on too. And we just hit it off and start chatting. And he says, well, I play drums in a band, but it's out of Jerome. And, I have some friends. And I said, well, I've always wanted to be in a band, and, it'd be awesome to put something together. Totally talking out of my ass. Nobody knew I was into music like that. Nobody, I was like, like we talked before we started, I'm a person that says yes to everything. And I was like, yeah, let's do this. Sure. I have no idea. And he says, well, I know somebody that plays guitar. Maybe I can get them to participate. And I said, well, I've got a best friend, my best friend, and I've talked about a little bit about, it'd be cool to be in a band. And, if we were ever in a band, he'd have to learn how to play bass. So, I could, talk to him. And so we decided to stay in touch. I went and told my best friend, hey, you got to learn how to play bass. We're going to put a band together. And, and funny, long story there, but he's like, okay, I'll figure it out. So he went and picked up a cheap bass and a cheap amp and started noodling around and found some guys playing country that needed a bass player, and learned how to play bass with some older guys in a country band. And the drummer and I stayed in contact for a few months, and it wasn't quite aligning. And finally, after, 6, 8, 10 months, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to get together. So we set it up. He brought all his stuff back over from Jerome because the band he was in, it was just too much of a drive. And so he brought it all to my house that I was living at the time, set it up in the garage. My best friend, Nate, he wasn't there, I don't believe, at that time, but Fahad, who ended up, being our guitar player in my first band, he shows up with a friend and just plugged in, picked a couple of songs. I think the first song we played was Creed, Higher, and we just picked some songs, and really into 311, Seven Dust, things like that. We just jammed out on a few songs, and I think I used a guitar PA or a guitar amp, and plugged a mic into it, turned the volume way down because I really didn't want anyone to hear me. I was so nervous, and we just jammed on some stuff, and it was just a really cool vibe. And so one of the other friends that came also played guitar, who's just a friend of the guys from Jerome as well. Somehow we came up with this riff that ended up being one of our first songs that we ended up getting on the radio, and it translated into us forming a band called Fly to Void.
Okay, Fly to Void. You've also been in a couple other names.
I have.
What's the names of the other bands?
So from there, I was in a few different projects. Six Circles was one of them. On the Make was one, and then most recently we put together one with some guys that we love, Guy Ritchie, and so Gorgeous George.
Yes,
so
Gorgeous.
So we called our band Gorgeous George, but there was so many other Gorgeous Georges out there. We called it We Are Gorgeous George, and so we wrote an album as well. And yeah,
well, I want the listeners to go out and check out Gorgeous George, because the first time I had heard that you were a singer and in a band, I was like, get out of here. And then when I listened to it, I was like, oh my gosh, this guy's a rocker, just like me, man.
I appreciate
I'm
that.
A rocker.
Absolutely.
But the one thing I want to ask you about it is similar to the running side of things.
Mm-hmm.
You've shared with me before that music became an outlet for you.
Yes.
Tell me how the music became a relief mentally for you.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. So as I mentioned, throughout later teenage years, most of my life really, I really struggled with things like depression, and I was just really all over the map for, like I said, if we did psychoanalysis, I'm sure, where it stems from, and I didn't deal with it well, and my narrative became I'm broken. So, that's just what was stuck in my head for so many years. And with this band, I've never been one to be able to just be too fluffy. I wear my heart on my sleeve. I'm pretty transparent, and I write from that same place. And so we put this band together, and I didn't know how to write songs. I wrote poetry, and I journal, and a lot of it was brain dump. I just needed to get this out in some way. And so I started going through some of my writings, and the music I was actually thinking about this on my run earlier. It was very therapeutic because it was my outlet to deal with the frustration and explore these thoughts and feelings I had related to my childhood. And I was, like I said, I have a great relationship with my dad now, but I was very frustrated with my dad. I didn't understand why he left. He was just trying to figure things out. And I understand that now, but I wanted my dad there. And I really didn't understand it. And I was very angry. And so, we're playing heavy music. And so I'm trying to not be too explicit in what I'm writing about, just because I'm trying to keep some of that personal stuff personal. But at the same time, there's obviously a lot of emotion there. I never felt like I was a very good front man. I never felt like I was a good entertainer. I really wish, and I wouldn't change anything for how it's turned out, but I really wish I could have been a little bit more focused on enjoying it and the creative side of songwriting. But for me, it was an outlet. And so everything I was writing about was probably pretty dark, but it was my way of getting these things out and dealing with these emotions. And it seemed to connect with people. And in a very short period of time, within about 6 months, we had I think it was about 6 months from starting our band, we had a song on the radio. And we recorded this stuff in an attic with somebody that we found that could record it for us. And it ended up getting some pretty big attention from some of the major record labels, managers, lawyers, from people from New York and Hollywood. Here's this unsigned band that starts getting play on the local radio, and people are responding to it, and we're getting a lot of requests. And it turns out that we're one of the most requested bands and songs being played on the radio for one of the higher rated markets around, and it got attention. And next thing we know, we have people from, big people in the business wanting to have discussions with us.
Jayk, what do you say to somebody who may be struggling emotionally with challenges maybe like you have had, or some other type that you've used, whether it be music or running, as the outlet to heal and so forth? What do you say to somebody?
I definitely think you need to talk to somebody, but that's also difficult because over the years I've talked to different therapists. Unfortunately, in the headspaces I was in, I told them what I thought they wanted to hear. And so I was put on medication for a few years because I was diagnosed as bipolar. And so I was put on a heavy medication for about 3 years, which kind of tied around to my divorce from my kid's mom. And she basically said, I think you have issues. You need to figure something out or we're leaving. And so I would do anything at that point to try to save it. So I went to a doctor, told them what I thought they wanted to hear. They put me on this medication, and it really flatlined me. I felt very, I would say, just it didn't help. It didn't go to the root of the issues I was dealing with. I didn't have such highs and such lows, but I really wasn't dealing with the root cause of the issues. I quit that cold turkey, which they say don't do, but that's just kind of a thing with me. Is I get tired of things, and I get the switch flips in my mind, and I set my mind to something, and I make it work. So I quit that. My relationship was kind of done at that point, and I tried some different therapists, but I love to read, and so the things that I enjoy reading is I love reading about the mind. I love understanding how the inner workings tie together and how outside influences can affect how we feel and how we perceive. And so I was very much into learning about these things. So when I decided to go to different, therapists, psychologists, whatever, to me, I treated it like a game, and I didn't give it the true opportunity to help me that I think it needed. I was stubborn, and I wanted to show them how smart I was. So anytime they would ask me a question or I could see where they were leading, I'd flip it on them, and I would just play games with them to show them that I knew what they were doing. And it would last, a few visits, and I would get tired of it because, the novelty would wear off and I would quit going. So I would say you need to talk to somebody, but you need to give it a fair chance. And for me, what changed everything was love. Mm-hmm. I finally met somebody that just completely changed my life, and that I wanted to be better for them because they deserved it. And this was, as I was creeping in on 40, Tiff, we've been together almost 10 years now, and she absolutely changed my life. I've struggled with this stuff through my, most of my adulthood too, which, it's been a roller coaster of difficulties and beating myself up both physically and mentally for so many years that I'd quit drinking. I'd quit, doing all the, I had a really difficult time over the years with smoking cigarettes. And, I'm being totally honest and transparent here. These aren't things that I've really talked about or shared with people because, for one, I didn't want people to know how bad things were and how dark it was for me. But those aren't things that I wanted to promote. I wanted to make sure that if people saw me, they saw something that was hopeful, positive. And so I was at a point where I had hit such a rock bottom, and too many nights of curled up on the floor crying and just really just not even wanting to exist anymore. And I randomly met Tiffany, and it changed everything. I was still struggling through some things, and we had it's hard to combine families, which some of these things that I've experienced later in life have really changed my perspective on my childhood and what the decisions that my dad made, that my mom made, that my stepdad made, to where my love for my family is beyond anything that I have ever felt before. So I feel very fortunate in that regard that I'm sitting here and I'm so full of gratitude and love. And I look at where my life is at now, and it's beyond anything I could have ever have dreamed of. But yeah, the two things that changed it were I fell in love with my best friend, and I really wanted to be better for her even more than me because I thought she deserved it. And the positive impact that had on me was secondary. And I started to talk about it, and I started to share with her these things that I struggled with. And I still consider that, it probably would be good to talk to an actual therapist and be honest and give them an opportunity to really help. But yeah, the advice I would give is find somebody that you can trust and be vulnerable and open with, and let it go, because it is not healthy to keep that stuff stuck inside. It will absolutely tear you apart.
Well, thank you for sharing all of that. I know that's being open and vulnerable, but at the same time, those of us that know you recognize, at least from our perspective, that you've figured it out. You have this formula, and it comes through a variety of outlets, whether it be reading and journaling and music and running, and as you've mentioned, the love of family and this circle, and all of that together is this formula that you figured out, and it's put together this massive healing prescription for you.
It's a great way to put it,
and we see it, and
I appreciate that. Thank you.
It's not just in what we hear and talk with you, but it's what we see in the light in you, and it's just awesome. So,
I appreciate that. And this is one of the things on this whole topic that I was thinking about on my run earlier, is through all of these things, through all the dark periods, through the times that, I kind of surprise myself, I'm still here sometimes, I still always had this little fire somewhere deep down inside that continuously forced me to move forward. So one of the things I talk about is I say, keep moving forward. I've got bracelets that I've made that have it, it's even when things were at their worst through my entire life. I don't know what it is, but there's always been something in me that has forced me to do something, baby steps, small little things to keep myself moving forward even in the dark times. I didn't want to be stagnant because I expected more from myself. And I think that's actually kind of a curse at times too, because I'm my own worst enemy. I still look at the things I've done, and I'll be the first one to say I'm my own worst enemy, worst critic. I should have done this better. I should have found more success. I'll say that in quotes, because that's changed my definition of that over the years. But yeah, there's something that has continued to drive me to move forward, because I want to be a good person. I want to have a positive impact on those around me. I want to have a positive impact on my family. And I want to accomplish the goals that I've set for myself, but give myself the best opportunity to do that. And yeah, so like I said, for what life was like and where my head was at for the first 35 years of my life, I am absolutely blown away and thankful to be where I'm at right now. And I really appreciate you saying that you can see that, because that's what my hope is.
Yeah. Well, you have set this up for the next topic. You've talked about the next foot forward.
Mm-hmm.
And again, for those of us that know you, it is who you are. You are the next foot forward and dealing with adversity. And the stories are legendary. And so that's how we're going to shift and start talking about running.
Okay.
And your running career. And I know that you're not a track athlete.
Mm-hmm.
You're not the local 10K guy.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us just maybe in one or two sentences what type of runner you are.
One or two sentences. That's a tough one. I think like a lot of people that do very long distances, ultra running, I think because of what I had experienced throughout my life and the places that self-inflicted, I'll be the first one to say that, where I went in my own mind and the places that I struggled with and how bad it got at times, I could suffer really, really well. And you'll hear a lot of ultra runners, especially, that talk about the ability to suffer. I could drive myself mentally when my body was absolutely falling apart. I would figure out a way to just continue to push. And I'm going way beyond two sentences here.
Okay, so let's do this.
Sure.
Let's talk about suffering number one.
Okay.
Legend number one of Jayk Reynolds. Twin Falls to Boise.
Yeah.
How many miles is this?
140 is what it turned out to be.
Where does somebody say, I'm going to run on the freeway in their mind from Twin Falls to Boise? That is that to those of us that are runners, that's a suffer fest.
It is. It was, yeah, that was a very unique challenge.
How did it start in your mind?
Okay.
And give us just a 2 or 3 minute, maybe 5 minutes. Where did this go and what was it like? And did you get stopped and what was it like?
Sure. Again, great question. It's funny. Like there's so much of the things that I've done that I don't really think in depth about. And it's kind of, now that I'm in a better place in my mind, it's kind of nice to look back on these things and actually discuss them. So I appreciate you asking that question. So I was still playing in Fly to Void at the time, and we had, a very good following. We were selling out 1,500 seat venues, and pretty much anytime we set a show, we were having a lot of success. And so we'd get a lot of people that would come to us and ask us to play for a cause or an event. And while we really tried to support what we could, we had to make a agreement between ourselves that we had to limit what we did there, because otherwise once we started saying yes to this, we would feel horrible if we didn't say yes to everything. And so I had someone approach me, and one of their close friends had been in a very bad accident. She had been riding on the back of a scooter, was out drinking with some friends, and late at night had got kicked off the back of this scooter and left for dead in a driveway. Blows me away that she made it through. She was found the next morning laying there, just short of death. She made a miraculous recovery, but she was still dealing with it. I think she had 3 or 4 young kids at the time, single parent. And I had a close friend come and say, hey, this person that I'm very close with went through this, and they could use any help you can offer. Would you guys be willing to play a show to raise some money for them? Of course, yeah, I want to do anything I can to help.
Can't say no.
Yeah, I can't say no. But we collectively have to be careful about how we approach these things, because as I explained, but I would be willing to do something for you on my own. And while I don't have any money, I can run. And so I started thinking, what's the most difficult thing, just off the top of my head, really, that I can think of to do right now where I could do a fundraiser to help somebody out? And I thought, you know what? I'll run from Twin Falls to Boise. Most direct route I can think of is the freeway. And so I told him, I said, I'll do this to see if we can raise some money. So I called the state police and I said, is this illegal? You see people walking on the freeway if a car breaks down. Is this illegal? They said, no, but we obviously would highly advise against it. So, okay, cool. It's not illegal. So I set it up. I didn't put a ton of thought into it. I had, my girlfriend at the time said she'd help support. I loaded up my pack. I drove me down to downtown Twin Falls. I met a friend of mine who lived there. He ran with me out to the freeway, and then he, gave him a high five, and I took off. And so I'm running down the shoulder of the freeway. I threw on a neon deal so people could see, but you're getting people honking, semis flying past, wheel weights thrown, all kinds of stuff. And as you're running down the side of the freeway, the things you see are absolutely insane. And so I just started running. And my girlfriend would leapfrog every 10, 15 miles, wherever an off ramp was. So we would be out of the way, but otherwise I'm just out there running. And so try to throw my headphones in to block out the noise, because the difficulty with that run is when you're running 5-6 feet away from people that are doing 80 miles an hour, and I'm running with traffic. I was like, there's no way I can run facing traffic as you normally would running around the roads and stuff around here. I didn't want to see people coming at me, because I figured it, if I
distraction.
Exactly. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. I don't want to see it coming. And so, I started running.
How long did it take?
It took me, I want to say, about 30 hours.
And did you stop for a lengthy period of time during that?
No, I continued. I'd stop to go to the bathroom. I'd have to hold it until I could find if anybody knows that length of a freeway, very few places to hide. And so I would stop to go to the bathroom, or when we hit the off ramp, I would try to lay down and stretch my legs for a minute, because if they would be cramping up, because I started getting horrible cramps and all these things, and I would just reload my pack and take off again.
Mind over matter.
Totally. That was it. And so I just kept going. And one of the worst parts about it was when it got dark. I came over King Hill, and you get up above that to where you can see pretty much forever.
Yes.
And all I can see for, the curvature of the earth is taillights off in the distance in the dark. And so I threw a little headlight on the back of my head, but I didn't want anything too bright. So if somebody's in the middle of the night sees my light, they don't, go at me too bad. But, and I just tried to keep going.
Did you get stopped by the cops?
They did. They had to stop a few times. Hey, we've had a report of somebody out here running, and if anybody calls in a report, we have to stop.
Yeah, he's a crazy lunatic.
Yeah, exactly. You good? I was like, yep, I'm good. They were like, we know what you're doing. So, you sure you want to keep going? And so I did.
Where did you finish?
I came in I can't think of what, the Micron exit, whichever exit that is, right when you get into town. And I went and finished down at BSU Stadium. And
amazing.
I will say that the two things that I want to highlight there. One, it scared the hell out of me, because I had a semi blow a tire right next to me. And I about soiled my drawers. And I've got a picture of it as I came up after it pulled over, next, and I went by, and that I thought my life was over at that point. And then once the sun came up the next morning, and I was getting closer, probably, 15, 20 miles away, I had no idea, but I had some friends pop out of nowhere and started running a couple of sections with me. And as we got to about 15 miles out, they were doing construction on the freeway at that point, and they had shut down the whole, westbound stretch, and they had everybody kicked over to the east. Yeah. So we had this, for the last stretch, we had the whole freeway to ourselves. And there's a picture of, I was running with Ryan Anderson at that point, and there's a picture of us next to a sign that says, Boise, I think it was like 16 miles or something. And we're in the middle of the freeway and had it all to ourselves with the sun coming up. And Dave McKinnon showed up, some other friends too, but Dave McKinnon, as we're going, we found, scissors. So, we're laughing, running with scissors on the freeway. But it was a pretty crazy experience. And I'm very, very happy once we made it. I had no idea about this either, but the news was there, and so they did an interview with us, and so we got to share more about this incident that happened to raise more awareness for it. And I don't know the exact total, but we ended up raising a pretty decent amount of money for her, which went directly to her bills and her family. And so I didn't have any money, but I could run.
Well, that's who you are.
Yeah, I just wanted to help.
You're a giver, and that's what you do. Now, if running to Twin Falls to Boise is not enough, you've done several of these before. Yeah. And again, if the legend is not there and doesn't stop there, it just continues. Would you just give us a few more? I mean, let's talk Eagle Island. Let's talk McCall to Boise, or Cascade. Just describe those to the listeners.
So I like to do, I think it's called a Masogi. Every year I like to do one big challenge. And so last year, I decided to do McCall to Boise. I've been looking at that route. We've got family property up in Donnelly.
I think of that one all the time, too. That's just, I want to do that one, too.
Yeah, that's right at the top.
In a car.
Exactly. That's right at the top of everybody's list. But so I'd been talking about it for years. And Tiff, she just rolls her eyes at me at this point, and she's like, you're crazy. But it was 4th of July. It was a couple of days before 4th of July weekend. And I don't plan things out super well. I was like, in a few days, it's going to be 4th of July. I've got the time. It looks like the weather is going to somewhat cooperate. It wasn't quite super hot yet. I was like, I'm doing it. And so I just threw all my stuff together, and I think it was the first time. I had to do it twice. So I tried one time, and I got about 60, 70 miles in, and my feet just came apart. Poor shoe choice. My feet were super wet because I ran on the railroad tracks covered in weeds. But anyway, it didn't sit well with me. So 3 weeks later, feet were still torn up. I wrapped them up. And it was like I said, I looked at the weather. It was only going to get hotter. I was like, I'm doing it again. She's like, you're absolutely crazy. She dropped me off downtown McCall. I ran over towards the Old Mountain Road, ran Old Mountain Road all the way around the backside of Cascade Reservoir. So I never even went into Cascade or into Donnelly for that matter. And I did it fully self-supported. I was drinking out of streams. I had some food in my pack and, a few clothes.
Didn't you stop in Horseshoe Bend?
I did when I got to Horseshoe Bend. That was the first time I stopped to get some supplies because I was just wiped out. And
what does the mind say when you get to Horseshoe Bend and you have to go up the grade?
I just wanted to be done because it was way hotter than what I thought it was going to be. So we're at this point, I had ran through the night, and I had only got about 5 miles into the run, and my filter broke, and so I didn't have a water filter this entire run. So I was just finding spots of water that looked clean enough that didn't look like I'd get Giardia. I got Giardia before. That was fantastic.
That's good.
So I got to Horseshoe Bend, and I went into the store, got a 6-inch Subway sandwich, got a Coke, threw a Gatorade in my pack, refilled my water, laid there, and just tried to get my mind around going up that hill. And I loaded back up, and I went to the old Horseshoe Bend Road, ran up the highway to the old Horseshoe Bend Road and cut off, and then ran old Horseshoe Bend Road up to the top. And then from there, you have to run the highway. So it's kind of like running the freeway again.
Jayk, tell us, and we're going to go back to this 1 foot forward thing.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
How does your mind wrap around? Is it go to the next stoplight? Is it go? How do you get your mind to go to the depth that you do?
That's a great question.
Because it is deep.
It gets to a point where it can get pretty dark. So my mantra anymore is be here now. And so in ultras and all these things, when it really gets bad, it's just be here now, because you start overthinking all of it. Oh my gosh, I can't take this next step. Oh my gosh, I have to get to the top of this hill. Oh my gosh, it's so hot and I'm so dehydrated. My legs are so trashed from getting beat up by all the weeds and things along because I ran the train tracks here. I didn't run the highway because I think that would be suicide. There's not enough room. So I ran the train tracks, which gave its own set of challenges. I scared the heck out of a mountain lion in the middle of the dark that about made me soil myself.
Oh, really?
Oh, geez. Yeah. And the first time I went through, there is a tunnel for the old train track. And it was standing when I went through it the first time. When I went back the second time, 2 weeks later, and half of it had collapsed. And this is a massive tunnel. So it was a huge thing. But so I get up to it, and it's in the middle of the night, and I pull up my phone. I recorded. I was like, I don't know how this is going to go. I mean, is the rest of this going to fall on me? Is there, a critter in here? And I just started going through it. And then I hit a big wall, and I had to climb and scramble all the way to the top of everything that had fallen up over top. But yeah, so getting up over that Horseshoe Bend Hill and all that, I just was reminding myself, be here now, be here now.
Well, I love how you do that. And again, knowing the stuff that you have done and knowing how your mind can focus, it's amazing.
Well, I appreciate it. And I think a lot of people have that within them. There's people that have done way, crazier things than I've done. Anymore, there's, these 200s and 300 ultra marathons, which I think you get into a point where you're getting into a multi-day stage event. And to me, my attraction is I want to start, and I don't want to stop until I'm done. And so to me, that's the challenge, is how hard and how far can I push myself, and can I keep this together when my body wants to quit? How can I pull it back together and keep moving forward?
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to shift here real quick.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to come back to some more running stuff.
Sure.
I'm sure our listeners and you are familiar with speed dating. I'm going to give you speed questions.
Oh, geez. Okay.
And these are quick answers, no long sentences or anything. You're just going to start answering question. Give us your current running shoe.
My current running shoe is the Hoka Challenger ATR and the Innovate Terra Ultra.
Listen to music while you're running or not?
It depends. Probably 50-50. I'm really into old outlaw country right now, so I've been listening to that, but I'll listen for a little while until I get through the first few miles, and then I want to be in the moment. So nothing.
Okay. Pre-run drink.
Pre-run drink, coffee.
Pre-run food or a snack.
Generally nothing, but if I do eat something, I'll eat a piece of bread.
Favorite trail to run on.
Ooh. Favorite trail. I love running to the tower. It's so sad that it burned this year, but Homestead Trail, Cobb.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Favorite race you've ever done.
Although Cerbiday's right up there too. Favorite race I've ever done. That's a tough one. Speed Goat was a brutal one. I'm Tough will always hold a very special place in my heart.
We're coming back to I'm Tough.
Okay.
Longest run nonstop.
Nonstop.
No breaks.
Well, that's a tough one.
Even if it's a guess.
Because
Just total
Eagle
miles.
Island was 184, but I mean, you have to stop to refill there. I would say without breaks, well, really, the McCall to Boise, other than stopping to fill up my water, was nonstop.
Do you prefer long runs or short runs?
I need the long runs. I don't even find a stride in my zone until I'm at least a handful of miles in.
What's the coldest day you ever ran in?
Oh, geez. I ran in sub-zero. Oh, actually, that was last year, and it was negative. Oh, my gosh. It was like negative 15.
Hottest day you've ever run?
Oh, 117, 18.
What's the dumbest thing you've forgotten on a run? Meaning that you forgot to bring on a run.
Water on a really hot day.
Oh, we're going there. Have you ever hallucinated on a run?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Have you ever seen a wild animal on a run?
Oh, I've had quite a few wild animal encounters on runs.
What's your bucket list race?
That's a great question. I wouldn't say a race so much, but what has been on my bucket list for a number of years is I want to do a transcontinental run. I want to run coast to coast.
Hat, visor, or nothing?
Well, my hair is thinning out on the top, so I will generally wear a hat.
Favorite electrolyte?
Element.
Favorite first aid station food?
Peanut butter and jelly. Oh, no. Gummy bears. I've run majority of races with gummy bears.
Race you would recommend for somebody?
For 100, I'm Tough, and this is local. But I would say anything that introduces you to it, whether it's 5K, 10K. I think whatever you can get into to introduce yourself.
Ice cream or chocolate?
I don't deal with dairy so much well anymore, but I can do some damage on a little bit of chocolate.
Pizza or burgers?
Burgers.
Watch or no watch?
Well, I say that and I'll eat a whole pizza. I'm hit or miss with that. For a while, I was really getting, for so many years, I didn't run with anything. I started using a watch more, but then I got too focused on making sure I started it. I had to start it and stop it because I wanted, post to Strava, make sure people see that you're getting out. And I actually turned my Strava and all it back to private. And I run with it maybe half the time.
Coke or Pepsi?
Coke. I don't like, Pepsi's too sweet.
Fries or tater tots?
Ooh, I do love me some tots, but I probably eat fries more. These are good questions. And it's hard because I'm so long-winded. It's hard to give a short answer.
Craziest thing you've done on a run?
Oh, geez. Probably some of the directions or the routes that I've chosen. Because for me, when I'm out on a run, it doesn't matter if I'm way back in the wilderness by myself. To me, I like the most direct route and I want the steepest. So there's been times that I've been starfished on the side of a mountain because I'm, 20, 30 miles into a run. And I'm like, I want to go to the top of that. And I start going, and I'm thinking actually of Zion right now, where I got pretty nervous that I was going to lose it and completely come off the mountain.
Trail or no trail or pavement?
I want to say that I'm a good steward of the trails and I do love running the trails, but I think there are times where I try to tread lightly and I go off.
Run with people or by yourself?
I would love to run with people more, but for all the reasons we've discussed earlier, for me, I run anymore because I need that release. I need that mental release, or I just need to go deep inside myself to work something out. So I would say 95% of the time I run alone.
If you could meet one person that you cherish to meet, who would that be?
Oh man, that's a great question. Man, that's a tough one. because it's hard to decide if it would be somebody in music or somebody in running, or, we're both hot rodders, somebody involved. I'd love to talk to Chip Foose. For those that don't know Chip Foose, I think Chip would be an awesome conversation.
Well, let me ask you this. This doesn't have to be a short answer. You have gone where Tiffany has run races.
Yes.
Tell me the experience it is as a runner when you are watching a loved one run and you are now the support. What kind of feeling do you feel when you get to watch your wife run?
That's a great question.
Your girl, your sweetheart, this is the person you love. And what does that make you feel?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that, because when we got together, Tiff's always been very athletic. She loves CrossFit and she would run, but if she made it a mile, she really had hip issues and would struggle with it. Obviously, being with me, she's exposed to something that she's never seen or understood, these long distances and stuff. And so she decided that she wanted to run, a 50K. She wanted to see what that was like. And now she's done it a few times. And I've seen her struggle to depths where, I understand what that's like, but I can't even tell you the sense of pride that I had at seeing her get across the finish line on some of these, knowing that she just proved something to herself that she would have never in her wildest dreams ever imagined that she would have, for one, engaged with, and two, been able to accomplish, which again led to her doing a couple more in different experiences at each one. There was one where they started pulling, she was having a really tough day, and they pulled some markers, and she ended up having to run a last chunk. I don't even remember how many miles, with no water, no nothing. Just had, and when she came across that line, for one, she was pissed, but like it just blows me away how strong she is to be able to just really put her head down and accomplish a goal when she sets her mind to it.
So as a spectator, when you're watching that, give me the raw feeling.
It's tough because I just want to go out and run it with her, but I've intentionally not ran those races with her because I want her to have the full experience herself. I'll crew and I'll support, but it's just, it's a different experience, and it's something that I want to do more of. I want to volunteer more. We've been trying to make a conscious effort. We've been volunteers for numbers of years at like the McClassic and I'm Tough and things like that. So I do think that there's, if you're involved in these things, you need to be a part of it on both ends. You need to volunteer, pace somebody, support, give and take. But it can be tough at times. And she always asks me, don't you want to run it too? But I'm actually completely content to be there to support her and watch her accomplish this goal. So, if I were to lay it out to land the plane, it's absolute. I'm just so proud of her.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's so great to be able to watch people that you love and care for. And I don't care if it's your friend or your wife or your significant other or your child, when you get to watch them accomplish something that maybe you've touched or done yourself.
Yep. And you know what it's like.
And especially because you've been to the well.
Yes. And the cool thing of that, it went a step further. So once she did this, she had such a huge impact on her family. Her family, multi-generational, they're all, grew up in Payette.
Yeah.
It ended up after they saw that she did this and they started asking her questions, and oh my gosh, and you didn't die. We went down with a huge contingent of her family, and they wanted to run and experience a trail and an ultra and all these things. And we went down to Moab, and it was her sisters, her nieces, her daughters. I think we had 10 different people. So it not only impacted her, but now it's impacted her family to do things that they never thought that they would ever do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's go back to another race. Let's talk about I Am Tough, because you've brought it up probably 5 times, maybe a dozen times. There's been some highs and lows in that race.
For sure.
Tell me the distance so that our listeners know.
It's advertised as 100, but if you know Jeremy and Brandy, the race directors, it's closer, I'd say, to 106. Yeah. And it's a big mountain race. I mean, it's a lot of gain.
Located in central Idaho.
Yep, up in McCall. Well, around McCall.
Yeah.
Valley County.
And the courses definitely have elevation up and down.
I'd say it's world class. Jeremy was a sponsored athlete for a number of years, and he put together, I would call it a world class course destination. Yeah.
So shout out to the folks at I Am Tough.
Absolutely.
This is definitely one of the greatest runs here, at least in the United States.
It's a trail festival.
It is.
Yeah.
It really is. But it has been something that's defined you.
Yeah.
It's been something that's conquered you,
Yes.
but it's something that you've conquered.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it conquering you first before we talk about it conquering you. I only know of one time that it's conquered you because you ran with Wayne when he decided to throw up a few times.
Oh,
so talk about
that was a rough one.
Yeah, talk about that. And I think you may have ended short.
I did. Yeah. So I'm Tough has ate my lunch a few times. And so to give the full scope of I'm Tough, it was the first 100 I ever did, second ultra I ever did. As I got introduced to ultras, I just read a bunch of books. First one, I read a book, read about these 100-milers. I found the one that was close to here. I tried to sign up. I got an email that's from Jeremy that said, do you know what you're getting into? Have you ever done any of this before? I was like, no, but I think I can do it. This will be great. And so he's like, maybe you should try something shorter first. So I went and signed up for the closest upcoming race that I could, which was Wilson Creek, and it was 100K. Again, I've never, ran them. I've ran some distances, but it was just on my own, completely unorganized. So I signed up for Wilson Creek and had my first ultra experience. And I sent him an email back and I said, okay, I did it. And I actually, I had some ups and downs, but I actually surprisingly finished pretty well. I think I got third at that. And so can I do it now? And he said, okay. So I'm not answering your direct question of that moment. So actually, maybe I'll answer your question first, because that first experience at I'm Tough it really defined my ultra running career and the direction and how I approach these things. So to your point in this run with Wayne, I took off on this run with him, and it was a very hot day. And as everybody knows, you can plan and plan and plan, and you can expect things won't go to plan, and then you have to adjust. Generally, I can force my way through and just suffer. This one it ate me up. I went out too fast. I didn't hydrate well. I didn't stay on top of my electrolytes well. And I started cramping up so bad that I was convulsing. It was horrible. And my legs would spasm. And I was just like this total body spasm as I was trying to just keep moving. And I kept having to stop because I couldn't even, get my body to function correctly. And I'm in the middle of the wilderness and there's nothing around. And
except for Wayne.
And
well, you came upon him.
Yeah.
He came upon you.
Yeah. We got some time together. And so we got to an aid station and I'm sitting down, and Tiff and our friend April were there to crew me. And I stopped and I'm just spasming. And, Wayne's going through his own difficulties and throwing up, and I can hear him just, I mean, his sound effects are legendary when he's letting it go. And so finally I'm like, Wayne, you've just got to go. Don't wait for me. We're both struggling, but you continue. And so, God, that guy, man, he finished, and it blows me away how much that guy can
when
just
did you drop
pound.
out?
So I only made it to about 35, 40 miles. It was that bad. I ended up climbing up to where I was just short of crest line. And if anybody knows crest line, you get up there and you're in a world of trouble if you have issues. And I was right before you start hitting it. And I was way back in the middle of nowhere where the goat aid station, there's an aid station that they have to pack in things with goats because there's no access. And I get myself back there and my body just will not function. I can't walk. I take a step and I just have to stop, and I'm convulsing, and I get there. I finally get there and I tell them, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I can't keep going. They're like, there's no way to get you out of here. And so I go and I lay down, and I'm scared actually at this point, because I've only had probably 2 or 3 experiences where I really got scared of whether or not I would be able to find my way out of these experiences. And that was one of them. And randomly out of nowhere, we hear this buzz, and this hunter comes busting out of the brush on a little tote goat, and he was just doing his thing, and he comes out of the brush, and he's kind of coming towards us, and the gal that's manning the aid station runs over and starts waving, and after some conversation, he agrees to take me down, and we have to go on these trails, which it's rocks, it's roots, there's not a trail sometimes, it's steep, it was just madness. And I'm on the back of his little motorcycle, holding on to his pack, holding on to him, and my legs are kicking straight out to both sides and spasming. It's like airplane wings, and I'm just a mess trying to hold on to him. And periodically I'd have to get off because it was so steep and bad. And finally made it to a road, and there was I ended up flagging somebody else down, and they got me out. But yeah, by far the worst race DNF I've had. Usually, if I've had a few where it was very late in the race and something happened. And
Well, go 365 days past that and tell us that experience.
so of course, you can't leave it on that. You have to get the finish. Well, I couldn't leave it like that.
I know you.
I had to go back. And every time you swear you're never going to do it again. Oh, this is horrible. But I went back and I had a good run. I decided to let time go out the window because I've had some really good finishes, very close to 24 hours, which has always been my goal with that race. But when I went back, I let all that go, and I tried to let my ego just drop, because it's harder as you get older and you've done some of these bigger things, or you've had some really good finishes. I had a lot of podium finishes, and you always kind of compare yourself to your former self, your younger self. And so I got into the run, and I was probably 20 miles in and just having a good time, and came across somebody else that I just started chatting with, and we went back and forth a couple of times and ended up running the whole race with him. And I pretty much shut my watch off, didn't care, and we just had an adventure. It took us however long it took us.
You ran a great race.
It was fun. Yeah, we had a good time and finished, and I made a friend in the process.
Yeah. A really good friend.
Yeah. He's been Austin Black. He's actually been on the podcast.
He's been on your podcast.
Yeah, great guy.
Had it never happened, you probably would have never had that friendship.
I would have just put my head down like I've done in the past and powered through like I have on past races.
And I think that's one of the things that you and I have talked about before, is that the one thing about the running and your involvement in running is that it has brought so many friendships.
Absolutely.
And the value of those friendships. Yeah,
it really has. That's a great point, and I appreciate you saying that. So it is such a different headspace and involvement than my experience in music. Not to take anything away from that. I've met some amazing people, have some great friendships, but the people I've met in running and the friendships and relationships have been some of the most impactful and closest friends to this day, you included. There's just something about the connection that you have with people when you really just go out there, and we're all equal. It doesn't matter what your background is, where you come from, what you do for a living, any of that stuff. We're just all out there equal, trying to discover something about ourselves. And it has just been such a blessing that I have had the opportunity to have this be such a huge and impactful part of my life.
Yeah, and I think that's just the best. And I look back at my running career, and I mean, I've had some amazing things that I've done, but the friendships, running with the friends, it tops any accolades by far.
And when we chatted and recorded, that was one of the things I really took away from yours, is how much you were talking about that, about those connections and relationships that you've had, and then some of the people that we've connected with together from that to bring on the pod, and some of the other people I've chatted with. That's really what is the most impactful, is the connections that people have made along the way.
I was telling my wife just today, I was like, I got this little problem with my Achilles tendon, and I'm like, I don't care about anything. I just got to get to Saturday so I can run Lone Pine.
Yeah,
because that's what my buddies are going to be.
Right,
it's the weekend before Christmas, But
it's tough, that fear of missing out, of being there with your friends,
my friends.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I got a few more questions that I want to ask you about.
Sure.
Let me just touch here about the last book that you read.
Okay.
What was the last book you read?
I'm in the middle of, I've got Rick Rubin's book in my head right now because I'm in the middle of reading that one. Oh, I just finished a book by a guy named Mishka. I'm forgetting what his name is, but he was from up in Canada, from a reservation actually, and he's a kind of a wandering musician, and he was just discussing about his life, and his story was about an addiction to alcohol and kind of coming through it. But I've been really trying to dive more into biographies and stuff, because I love novels.
Would you recommend a book?
Anything by John Grisham. I'm a huge John Grisham fan. Like I said, I read a lot of business books, self-help. Yeah. But like I said, lately, because I've read so much of that stuff, I've really been trying to force myself to read more of stories of people. And so, like, I'm reading Sting's biography right now. I'm reading Flea's. I mentioned Rick Rubin. I've read, oh my gosh, so many different runners' tales, too many to count. But yeah, I would recommend, I'd recommend a biography. Read somebody's stories, because generally they're putting in some nuggets of wisdom that you can find a connection there to take away from.
All right, I'm going to put you on my mental clock here. So I'm going to be clicking it here.
Okay.
I'm going to give you 2 minutes to define winning.
Ooh. Defining winning. That's a really good question. Man, I'm going to have to remember some of these. I would say that it's successfully accomplishing a goal, but I think periodically goals can change. I think for me, winning would be when I go to bed at night, I know that I've done everything I can within that day to impact people in a way that makes them feel good about themselves. Doing something that's putting something positive in the world. Yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. To me, I would define winning right now. Where I'm at right now is the ability to put something positive out in the world that can have an impact on others to help them learn a little bit more about themselves.
A blue ribbon is not winning.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. Winning to me has nothing to do with coming in first in anything. I think it is very subjective. And yeah.
I mean, everything that we've been talking about today, I've been just in my mind, I've been thinking about Jayk has this definition of winning, and his definition of winning is being here now and one step forward.
It's life experiences.
Oh,
I always say that I want to have a bucket list life to where, so I've done all these varied things to, I would say some pretty, decent levels, music, running, career, cars, whatever. I want to look back on my life and I want to have the least amount of regrets possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What's your bucket list race? What is next for you right now? I mean, you mentioned that you want to do a transcontinental or something, but
yeah, that's down the road.
What's next on your horizon running wise?
So my longest run to date is 184 miles. And it was just short of that 200, but I got to a point where the person next, statistically wouldn't catch me. And I stopped about 2 hours early. It was a 48-hour event. So that's always been in the back of my mind, that 200, which I'm tough. I had an experience there where I was going for my 200 and I was going to pre-run the course 100 and then run the race 100. And I was about 85 or so miles into the first 100 and I got eaten by a pack of wolves, ran off the mountain by wolves. So I would still like to do either a double I'm tough or something to accomplish that 200 mile.
A double I am tough.
Yeah.
Has it ever been done?
Yes. I'm so bummed out because I was having a great run when all this happened, middle of the night. I think it was Friday the 13th. It was like 1 a.m, full moon. And like I said, it was going amazing. And I was on this little short stretch where it was an out and back. And as I'm running along under the full moon by myself, out of nowhere, I heard howling, ended up having wolves come up on my right side, probably within about 20 feet of me, started howling, barking, snipping, whatever. And it scared the hell out of me.
You were done.
Yeah. And so I just put my head down and kept going. And I got up about maybe another 1/8 of a mile. And all of a sudden on my left side, I had 2 more, probably within 10 feet. And I got pushed by probably 4 or 5 wolves on either side of me for about a 1/4 mile or so. And I thought my life was over. I truly felt like
this is it. I am tough.
This is it. I'm tough. Yeah. So I was doing I was going to do the pre-run 100 and then make it in time to line up for the race to then run the regular race and get my 200 that way with all the gain, all the loss. And so, yeah, I ended up getting in. It was an out and back, that little stretch. And so Tiff and our friend April were there waiting for me. And I truly thought that was it. I thought I was about to get attacked. So the only thing I can guess is full moon, a lot of animal activity that night. I was hearing moose calls and all that. So I think maybe there was a fresh kill close by and I came up on them on a fresh kill and they didn't like that. But I got to that point and, Tiff will tell you the story. It was, I don't know, 1, 2 in the morning at that point. I got to the car and, to reload on my supplies and stuff. And I started banging on the door and I was white as a ghost. Eyes were huge. And I was like, F this, I'm done. Yeah, there's no way that I'm going to turn around and go back through that again. And so I was going to go back and do it again the next year. And I can't remember what this guy's name was, but incredible athlete and story. He ended up doing the double. And I think he was doing some huge fundraising effort. I think he did the double and then like rode his bike to the next 100 somewhere. So it was kind of a buzzkill. but that's still there, as I would like to get my 200 at some point still.
Well, I shout out again to the I Am Tough folks. You've brought up Wilson Creek. You've brought up a number of races and stuff like that. We live in a great community, a great state that has some amazing places to run and some amazing races. I want to ask you a couple more questions. First of all, tell me some of your heroes.
Really, the one that I can't stop thinking about now is my dad. And it's so weird to come full circle to all these struggles that I came through and all of this anger and frustration and all these things that drove me to, to such dark places for so much of my life. I'm broken, I hate myself. I just,
And here he is.
And here he is, because when I finally had the opportunity to get to know him and start interacting with him, for one, I was older and more mature now too, and we could relate a little bit, but he'd also went through his own life experience to where some of what I've experienced now, I know where he was at. And so we connected and we talk, at least once a week, if not more. And he has truly turned into my absolute hero, because I realize more and more that I am so much like my dad, and I would have never had any idea.
Right on.
And if I wouldn't have had this opportunity to get to know him. And 100% my dad.
Give me 5 mentors.
Tiff has been a huge mentor to me.
Right on.
Again, like I said, my dad, you actually, we've sat down and I approached you, when years back, and the wisdom that I've gained from you and Wayne both, it really calmed me down. I think I was looking for validation that these things, like the way I thought and the way I saw the world and the things the efforts that I was putting in, that I was good enough, because I never felt like it. I was always comparing everything I did to everybody else, and I haven't accomplished, this, with music, I got here, but I didn't go here, or running, I got here, I didn't go here. In my career, I've done this, but I've spent so much time, just feeling like I wasn't good enough, in having these opportunities really to connect with you and Wayne, Russ Stoddard, like just some of those randomly. Russ, I didn't know him. I sent him an email and said, I'd love to sit down and chat with you. I'll bring you some coffee. And what I've learned in the conversations and in the friendship that we've developed over that time, to where not only was it the words that you told me, but it was just in like who you are and your demeanor and your sense of self. And it gave me a new perspective when we were able to sit down and have a podcast, because your comfort level in your own skin, like I aspire to that. And I really hold you and Wayne especially in such high regard, because there's just such a sense of peace that I get when I spend time with you, because I truly just feel like I'm good enough.
Well,
for all my warts, all my flaws, all my whatever, it all falls away, and I don't feel judged, and I don't judge myself. I truly and to me, that impact has been huge, and it continues. So yeah,
we all have dirty laundry, and I will say this, that you roll with who you roll with.
Yeah.
And it's great to be part of a circle of people like you've just mentioned, and you're part of our circle. So
I appreciate
that's
that.
awesome.
And it's people that truly want to see you find happiness and find the most authentic and true version of yourself, whatever that might be.
Yeah, we're just trying to make our world better.
Smiling.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just doing it one step at a time, 1 foot forward.
But you're doing things outside of yourself. You're having such an impact on the community in other ways. You're giving back for all the things, that you have been able to embrace. And to me, I aspire to that as well. It's this podcast and everything I'm trying to do with it. I truly hope that I can have the impact that you guys have had in the larger, landscape of community involvement in the future.
Well, we've spent quite a bit of time talking today. I don't know how long it's been, but it seems like a while. But I'm not finished. I got one last question for you.
Sure thing.
I've asked a lot of questions. What question have I not asked of you today that I should have?
Man, we could go for so long. There's so many things that we could deep dive into.
What didn't I touch on?
The one I was thinking about this on the run, trying to think of, because we didn't do any prep for this. Normally with people, I say, give me 3 or 4 or 5 jump off questions. This was totally.
What didn't I ask you?
I would say it's a question that I don't know how I would answer, but it's the question that Wayne posed to me initially and that I ask everybody is a closing.
What's your legacy gonna be?
What's your legacy? What does legacy mean to you?
Then answer it for me.
Man, and
I knew.
I kept thinking, it's like, I don't know.
I
how
have
to
it
answer.
written down here, but
Really,
yeah.
That's, to me, it's an important question, and it's a difficult question because there's no right or wrong answer.
Yeah.
So, one thing I really haven't touched on is more in depth about my family, more directly my kids. I don't talk a ton about them because I have a little bit of a difficult relationship with my kids. I have an 18-year-old and I have a 20-year-old, and then I'm also a proud parent of 3 bonus kids. I have a great relationship with my bonus kids, and unfortunately, over the years, it's got pretty fractured with mine, which has given me, for one, it breaks my heart every day. But it's also, again, given me a new perspective on what my dad went through. Because the only thing from what I dealt with in my own mind, in how I grew up and what I didn't have, for one, I'm trying to look more at what I did and not be so focused on what I felt like I didn't. But the one thing I wanted to be close with my kids. I wanted to be there for all the things. And when my ex-wife and I split, we have, different households. We've gone through different experiences, and my kids have gone through some very difficult struggles of their own, and we deal with them differently. I ask tough questions. I'm intense. I'm very, I want to, because of how I've had to approach problems and difficulties, I want to help people look at all sorts of different angles of problems. And I think sometimes maybe I could be a little bit too, I don't know. It's like you want to fix things for everybody, and sometimes you can't. You just have to sit there and listen. So this is a long way of getting to the fact that, like, what's the legacy that I hope I can be remembered for at some point, is I hope I'm remembered as a good parent. I love my family, and I love my kids unconditionally. And if there's anything that I have made a huge effort through my entire life to be very transparent about with my kids, and I know that they know this, because I can't hug them hard enough. I can't tell them enough. My love is unconditional. I don't care what form you take or what direction you go. I don't care what mistakes you might make. I don't care what difficulties you go through. I'm the guy that was there picking them up, having to, I'll respect the privacy of but I really hope that I'm remembered as a good parent. And I hope that the legacy that I leave is that I was full of love. I freely gave unconditional love, and that I was somebody that was there to encourage and support their happiness and success, whatever that looks like. And whether it's when they're 35, I hope it doesn't turn into like what I went through, because I know how much hell that was. I hope it's sooner rather than later. But if at some point, I really hope that I can connect with them and become as close to them as I am to my dad now. If they can look back and understand that I love them unconditionally, and everything I do is to try to support and encourage them, then that's a legacy that I will be absolutely happy to have.
Well, sometimes, Jayk, and I think when you look at it in hindsight here, based on what you've talked about, is that it's amazing what time does.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, your dad has turned into be a hero over time.
Absolutely.
And
everybody's experiences are different, and it takes as long as it takes to get there.
Time will probably do that exact same thing.
And Tiff has to remind me of that all the time, but I struggle with it because I'm so impatient in general, as you can tell by all the different, all the different things. I want to do it all, and I want to do it all now.
I know, we always do.
And I want to fix it all now. And sometimes you just have to. The hardest thing I've struggled with is letting go.
Yeah, let time take its place. And as I said, time is going to turn heroes. It'll make it happen.
Yeah.
Well, Jayk, this has been awesome. You are truly inspiring.
Thank you. I appreciate you taking the time.
You're an all-around good guy. You are our hero. Mm-hmm. You are the host of the Run from the Norm podcast and our stud in the ultra running community here in Idaho. It's been my honor to fill the seat of host today and to be the one to ask the questions. What a privilege and an honor.
Well, thank you so much for pushing me to do this. I know I was a little resistant. I'm much better at asking questions than I am about answering them, but I appreciate this. It's a good opportunity for me to give what I ask for, which is I ask for authenticity, openness, transparency, and yeah, you've shown great compassion in this conversation. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Absolute the best.
Thank you, Sid.
Right on.
And that is it. I tried to just give you everything I had to be as open and authentic as possible. I hope that came through. One other thing, we didn't edit this conversation at all. That's part of why it's coming out so fast. It is exactly as we had it from front to back. You had every little verbal tick that we had in there. It just flowed, and so I just wanted to give you exactly what I had. So thank you so much to Sid for taking the time to be our guest host and ask some awesome questions that I'm going to have to use in some future episodes. And a huge thank you to you, the listener, as always, for taking the time to listen to these episodes. I hope you did find some value in it, some motivation, inspiration, and all those things. And I do ask one little favor. Please, if you would, like and follow the Run From the Norm Facebook page. We have a lot of really, really good things planned for 2025. More conversations are going to be coming your way that are just awesome, and I can't wait to share with you. So please like and follow the Run From the Norm Facebook page. You can also learn more at runfromthenorm.com. I do this by myself, so I'm trying to constantly update and add more valuable content even to the website. It's a work in progress as always, so any feedback is always welcome, and you can give me that there. With that, I will say, get outside, keep moving forward, and run from the norm!
Check that mic, make sure it sound right, boy.